What's going on, America? Kevin from Kevin's Corner, where I try to make some sense out of nonsense. And let me start off by saying I am not a Russian agent. I'm not a Putin puppet. I'm not carrying water for the Kremlin, but I do have some concerns. Before we get into this video, make sure you hit like, share my videos, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Also, make sure that your notifications are on and they're set to all. Now, let's get into this. But first, quick commercial break. Hey, did you know silver prices are low right now because investors are selling their holdings because of the turndown in demand? Once fears subside, though, we could see a surge in demand for silver as consumers come back. A perfect time to get your silver IRA started. And this month, you'll get a free, incredible 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with a qualified IRA of $20,000 or higher. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold. Call the team now at 877-646-5347 to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That is noblegoldinvestments.com. Now, let's get to this video. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Kev from Kevin's Corner, where I try to make sense out of nonsense. And yet, we are in a very interesting time in our country, y'all. Yeah, that's right. Apparently, the Biden administration, along with some European countries, have appeared to be picking a fight with Vladimir Putin for some reason. Now, this is a little disturbing because this doesn't just involve the Biden administration. It involves the whole world. They're playing with fire. I mean, the Bible does say in the last days there shall be wars and rumors of wars, but this one right here could get out of hand if you have somebody like Joe Biden trying to negotiate things, or whoever's running him. So here's a new report. Will Cain actually is standing in for Tucker, and he is giving us a new update and his take on this whole situation with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that mysteriously just blew up. Let's see if we could maybe do some deductive reasoning, maybe come to some conclusions, ask some simple questions without being called a traitor to your country, and get to the bottom of things, because this is getting real serious. So with no further ado, let's get into this.
Olynya Air Base, it's near Finland. And it's the headquarters of Russia's Naval Reconnaissance Air Division. Now, it normally houses heavy bombers and cruise missiles. It's an important staging ground for Russian military operations in Ukraine. On August 21st, an Israeli intelligence firm, ISI, noticed something unusual at Olynya Air Base. Satellite imagery detected the, quote, unusual presence of 4 Tu-160 Russian strategic bombers there on site. Now, these are strategic supersonic bombers that are designed to carry nuclear weapons. You're seeing the satellite images from Olynya Air Base on your screen right now. Then, just days ago, on September 25th, Israeli intelligence spotted 3 more Russian strategic bombers at Olynya. These were Tu-95 turboprops. They're one of the oldest nuclear-capable missile platforms in Russia's arsenal. So prior to August, the Jerusalem Post reports there were no strategic bombers at Olynya. Now, as of this week, there are at least 7. Ukraine is now well within the range of both bombers.
It appears then that when you start seeing activity like that, where, you know, an enemy of yours is positioning himself or themselves into a military position, when they start moving equipment around, that should make your antennas go up that they're getting dead serious. Now, we all know what happened in Ukraine. Russia's been fighting with Ukraine for several months now, and it unfortunately has hurt us way more than Putin. See, it was supposed to, hurt Putin, but for some reason it ended up hurting us until recently. These mysterious Nord Stream pipelines just blew up. Now, I would like to get to the bottom of that. I'd like to know what happened, because when something like that takes place, and it is very vital to a country's survival, they'll probably take it pretty seriously. And they're going to want to know who's up to it, who did it, and so on and so forth, because we don't want it to lead and escalate to some war or something that would drag us all into it. But let's go ahead and see if we can get to the bottom of it. So now these supersonic jets that carry nuclear weapons are starting to pile up. That's not a good sign.
In related news, the deputy head of Ukraine's intelligence just determined that there's a, quote, very high risk of imminent tactical nuclear strikes on Ukraine. Now, given all of this, every NATO country now needs to answer a very basic question. How are you going to lower the temperature? How are you going to prevent global nuclear war? It's really the only question that matters. Our leaders, though, have no answer. None whatsoever. Instead of calming tensions, in fact, they seem to be deliberately provoking Russia.
What?
Today, Joe Biden once again accused Vladimir Putin of blowing up his own pipeline.
Oh, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is that moment where I'm getting a little concerned. See, it was funny at first with Joe walking around not knowing where he's at, having the Easter Bunny walk him around, calling out to dead people, trying to shake ghost hands. It was funny. It was funny at first. But now this dude is pretty much playing with all of our lives. When Russia obviously have a reason to be upset about these pipelines, and the only people who are on record saying what they would do to those pipelines is us. And instead of trying to de-escalate, it appears that he's talking reckless. Now, my question is, why would he be doing that? Do the people want war with Russia? Do the Russian people want war? Do the European people want war? Who is it that wants war? And they don't want to de-escalate this. Why is it so important to these globalists, not just here in our country, but other countries, to get Putin out of power? I think it comes down to Putin recognizing that the Western countries want to get him out of power. Now, up until this point, before I was able to see the corruption, the evil diabolical schemes by members of our country, leaders from our country and other countries colluding, getting together, talking about world domination and all of those things, talking about globalization, the Great Reset, the New World Order. Before I sat back and watched them do that, it was easier to say that Putin is the villain. He's the bad guy. And it breaks my heart. For the first time, I'm now looking at the U.S. and I'm saying, you know what's keeping the U.S. righteous and hanging on to what we stand for and being able to say, you know what, we do take the moral high ground, is not the Biden administration and these globalists. No, it's the people. We, the people, are the ones that is the heart of the U.S. But the representatives of the U.S. has made us look equal, if not worse, than the villains. So now it's very hard for me to justify why we should talk reckless to Vladimir Putin when I see our leaders doing stuff that is diabolical. Oh boy, I hope it's not true, but let's listen to Creepy.
You also asked me earlier about the pipeline, and let me say this. It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies. And at the appropriate moment when things calm down, we're going to be sending divers down to find out exactly what happened. We don't know that yet exactly, but we're not, just don't listen to what Putin is saying. What he's saying we know is not true.
Y'all hear this liar? Do y'all hear this man, what he just said? Now you see what I'm talking about? I mean, it's sad to say that I'm wondering who's the good and the bad guy in this situation. So here's the guy who's been lying about everything since he even got elected, or should I say was put in office. The man said he didn't know anything about his son's dealings with Ukraine and with China. He lied about that. The man said he had nothing to do with that meeting to set up Michael Flynn. He lied about that. He's been lying all over the place. And now he's up here saying Putin's the liar. This is the same guy who tried to tell us that the gas prices were Putin's gas price hike. This is the same guy that tried to say that, no, we don't have an inflation problem. No, that's not a problem. This is that guy. And he's saying, once again, Russia is lying. But see, the problem with this is that this is such an irrational, illogical lie that it's even hard to sell to the people on the left. You're trying to tell me that Putin sabotaged his own pipeline for what? This doesn't make sense. But let's hear him continue to try to convince us.
Okay, don't listen to Putin. Should we then listen to Joe Biden? In February, Biden said this, quote, if Russia invades, then there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will bring it to an end.
Oh.
And then the State Department, Victoria Nuland, she said the same thing. She said, quote, if Russia invades Ukraine one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward. Now, what's interesting is those threats reveal who has incentive for Nord Stream 2 to come to an end. You see, the reason our leaders would make those threats is because Nord Stream 2 helps Putin. There's no reason for him to sacrifice his leverage over Europe by destroying his own pipeline. On the other hand, we all know who is capable of shutting down his own pipeline. That would be Joe Biden and the Keystone XL pipeline.
Now, see, it would be different if Joe hadn't had a big mouth like a runny diaper on TV talking about we'll sabotage that pipeline. Then his other person in his cabinet, she said the same thing. So the only person on record saying that they will sabotage that pipeline is us. And now this man wants us to believe that Putin did it himself. And if it wasn't a threat to us, if it wasn't going to hurt Europe, if it had no benefit to Putin or to us, we wouldn't have been on TV saying that we'll shut that thing down. And now he comes right out there and lies to the American people and tries to make it seem like for some reason Putin decided to blow up his own pipeline. That's a hard sell. It's a real hard sell.
Now, look, there are those, in all fairness, who say the following. They say this is Russia's way, bombing their own pipeline, of constricting supply so that they can jack up global oil and gas prices and then in turn make more money on existing contracts with India and China. But here's a question. Why blow up your own infrastructure?
Good point.
Why not, just turn off the tap? In fact, that's exactly what Vladimir Putin did just a few weeks ago. He shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. There was no gas flowing through a pipeline that now he's being accused of bombing and sabotaging in order to constrict the supply of oil and gas, a supply of which none was flowing through Nord Stream 2.
Now, see, there you go. When you start asking questions, then the left will call you a Putin puppet, a traitor to your country, you're carrying water for Putin, when all you're doing is using deductive reasoning because you don't want to be so naive and then one day wake up and realize that greedy, evil people have taken our country into war that will impact us. They'll be in their bunkers. Their kids won't be sent off to war. These are the people who are antagonizing this whole thing for some reason. See, now I got a theory. My theory is this. When they all meet over there in Davos and they're always talking about the New World Order and, the Great Reset, there are countries that don't buy into that. They don't want to be a part of that. One of them was us when Donald Trump was the president. And they tried to get him to come in with that stuff. And he came right out to the microphone and he said, these people back there want us to join this one world order. No, we're not going to do that. We're a sovereign nation. And then just mysteriously up jumped the virus and all of this chaos happened. And you had George, who saying Trump was an anomaly that would disappear in 2020. They seem to have a very coordinated effort to get rid of Trump because he did not want to join this alliance. Neither does Putin. Now, could it be that Putin is not really interested in war and all of that, but he might be more interested in staying a sovereign country and not bowing down to this globalist cabal of leaders that really aren't representing the people in no country. They're only representing themselves. So now it appears to me that even though we got all of this discord in our country and other countries where folks fighting against folks and the right is against the left and there's racism and the discrimination and all of that stuff, it appears to me that some people want us to focus on those things, but the real threat is not white against black, gay against straight. It is the elites against the non-elites. It is the high upper class of globalists, the one percenters that were talking about hacking human beings and running us and controlling our minds and replacing God. It seems like it's coming down to them versus all the rest of us, regardless what country. And if a country's leader is not okay with joining that, then perhaps they all have to get rid of that guy or person to make that happen. Boy, I would hate to think that on this occasion, we're the bad guys. Or no, we're not the bad guys. We just got bad leaders in our country that are the bad guys.
Now, to be clear, I don't know who is responsible for this. I'm just trying to logically follow incentives.
That's it.
If the U.S. or its allies sabotaged Russian pipelines, it wouldn't be the first time. In 1982, Ronald Reagan authorized the CIA to blow up a Siberian natural gas pipeline using software. So we, American citizens, before we march to a drumbeat directly into global nuclear war, are entitled to answers.
Thank you.
You know who else is entitled to answers? Climate activists. You'd think they'd take notice. You'd think they'd ask questions.
Exactly.
Why? Because the Nord Stream 2 leak caused more than 300,000 metric tons of methane to enter the atmosphere.
Wow.
Sounds like a lot, right?
Yeah.
Here's how much, according to Bloomberg. That's roughly, quote, the same climate impact over a 20-year period as the annual emissions from about 5.48 million U.S. cars.
Now that's pretty impressive. And you know, he made a good point. See, we don't want to be so patriotic that we're blind and stupid and naive and we just go running in to a situation that technically our country shouldn't even be involved in. This is no different than the tactic they tried to use when they have violated Donald Trump's rights and went in, raided his house, and all of a sudden, they're saying, well, you got to be loyal to the FBI, even if they're corrupt. Your patriotism and support for police that you're always bragging about should trump your common sense. You should overlook political and governmental corruption and just say, well, you know what? If our government's saying, let's do it, I guess they know best. I mean, because we're the U.S. and we couldn't possibly have corrupt leaders doing things like that that could put our whole country in danger. Could we?
But our leaders, even our green energy czar, they're hoping we ignore all of this.
We are all of those people.
If that's the plan, it just might work. Because there's so much going on, it's hard to keep track.
That's
and what
goal.
amounted to a
Keep us
crazy day
distracted.
that literally flew under the radar, flew under the weather radar and the news cycle. Russia attempted to annex parts of Ukraine. And then, in turn, the U.S. announced new sanctions on Russia.
We're
What?
announcing
More sanctions?
new sanctions today as well, that including new authorities to sanction anyone
Just pushing
who
us
provides
towards war.
political or economic support to Russia's fraudulent territorial claims.
Look at the weak guy.
And I've been in close touch with our NATO allies, who are united in our resolve to take on his aggression.
Once more, let's dare to ask a few critical questions.
Yeah, please.
Let's dare to critically think.
Yeah.
Why would more sanctions deter Russia? The last 7 months of sanctions have led to blackouts and food shortages in Europe.
Good point.
Meanwhile, in Russia, the ruble got stronger.
Oh.
By the way, our economy tanked. History has shown, in fact, that from Japan to Syria to Russia, sanctions don't deter, they provoke. And maybe
Yeah. See, because I'm wondering if I'm Putin and the whole West is trying to bully me and muscle me into surrendering or giving up my leadership over the country or joining a global network or whatever they're trying to do. I don't care how much they sanction me. I wouldn't give a darn. I mean, I believe China probably don't want to join that mess either. And that's why you see China and Russia kind of drifting towards each other. Probably some other actors like Iran. So it appears then that these Western countries that have globalists running them with money and big businesses, they're the culprit. They're the ones that are saying, you know what, for us to complete our diabolical scheme of uniting the world under one world government, we got to get rid of these sovereign countries, as what they're trying to do right now to America. See, they're using these tactics as well on us. So now my question is Vladimir the bad guy, or is Biden and these globalists the bad guys? I'm starting to wonder. It's a heartbreaker, y'all.
maybe that's the goal. It's the only way to achieve regime change in Russia.
There you go.
Which is the stated goal of the Biden administration.
Yeah, 'cause he
Remember,
said it.
Putin, quote, cannot remain in power. Joe Biden's words last March. And he means it.
Wow.
In April, Russia and Ukraine had a tentative agreement to end this war. Ukraine could have kept its territory. All they had to do was promise not to become a NATO member because NATO wants to remove Putin from power. But the Biden administration and the UK vetoed that deal.
You see? So let me understand. We could have avoided all of this by simply saying, you know what? We're not trying to overthrow you and get you out of power, okay? There's a reason why Trump got along with all of these people. Once he got in office and they realized this man is not like the rest of these politicians, he's not down with globalism, he's not trying to force us out of power and cause regime change and all of those things that our government's been doing for years. Once they realize that, hey, look, man, don't bother us, we won't bother you. Let's be fair. Let's all look over and look after our own people. Let's make money, all of those things. And yet they said Trump was going to take us into World War III. What would take us into World War III is attacking countries trying to topple their presidents so that a small group of globalists could unite that country and bring them in to this one global alliance for whatever reasons. Maybe it's just that they ain't got nothing else to do with their money. They done reached the pinnacle of success and they're like, you know what's next? Global domination. And Putin's standing in the way, just like Trump was standing in the way. And now it's all starting to make sense. They want Trump gone. They don't want him coming back. And it's funny that they want Putin gone too. Interesting. Let's continue because the plot thickens.
So, again, a critical question. Is this really about keeping Ukraine safe?
Good question.
Or is it about regime change
Bingo.
in Russia? Even if that means starting a world war.
Yep.
Today, if there was any doubt left, the president of Ukraine settled that question. He signed Ukraine's, quote, expedited application to formally join NATO. It's yet another slick, well-produced video from Kiev. Watch.
На вступ у пришвидшеному порядку в НАТО.
All of our money going over to this country. We don't know where it's going. Billions of dollars. Yep. And now he joins NATO.
Nice pan on the handheld camera. If Ukraine joins NATO, that means world war under Article 5 of the NATO Charter. Millions die. Instead of trying to avoid that catastrophe, our media, though, is telling us that is essentially inevitable. The New Yorker, for example, just published this assessment. Quote, Fiona Hill, an expert on Russia, says that we are already fighting in the Third World War, whether we want to acknowledge it or not.
So we got these globalists wanting to drive us straight into war. Thanks all you Biden voters. I hope you realize now the danger that this has put our country in. Now, granted, I do believe in the Bible. And I know at this point we're looking at wars and rumors of wars, but I'm starting to see maybe the part that America is playing in the book of Revelations that everybody be wondering, what's our part? What are we going to be doing? Well, it looks like our Democrat Party, along with some rhino Republicans, are helping. They're playing their part in driving together that evil axis that will one day, turn into that one world government. Yeah, it looks like they're playing their part. So instead of just saying, let's be rational, respectful, let's mind our own business, let's not try to get in everybody else's sovereignty, what they want to do is say, nah, you ain't going to keep Ukraine from joining NATO. When this all could have been resolved by swallowing your pride and saying, okay, Putin, he said, long as Ukraine doesn't join NATO, he's not going to invade Ukraine. Therefore, Ukraine, don't join NATO. And we had all been cool. But no. For some reason, it was that important to these globalists in these Western countries and leaders that they would not make that commitment. Now, let's be honest. If, some country like Mexico or, Canada, for whatever reason, start an alliance with Russia and they allowed Russia to put their military right there in our backyard, would we be okay with that? No. So they want Putin to be okay with that. And now, technically, this looks like it could be justification for Putin to respond. Thanks, Joe Biden. Let's go, Brandon.
Perhaps save for the whole nuclear holocaust. Over at NBC, quote, historian Michael Beschloss just compared Putin's Russia to Nazi Germany before the start of the Second World War.
It's always that.
Why? Because Putin just announced that he's annexing territories into Russia, Ukrainian territories into Russia. Is that comparison fair? Putin to Hitler? NATO thinks so. The foreign minister of Poland just pledged that NATO countries will use nuclear weapons against Russia if Russia's strategic bombers carry out a first strike. He said it doesn't even matter if Ukraine is in NATO or not. Wow. In Washington, you will not find a politician in either party who disagrees on that point.
Which I'm upset
They all
about that.
believe that defending Ukraine is worth risking Armageddon. Of course. So does Lindsey Graham. He just also compared Putin to Hitler.
I hope we'll also send a very clear signal here that we're going to have more aid in the, if we do an omnibus in December, which I hope we will, to fund the government, that we will have a robust package of military support taking Ukraine into 2023. Have we learned nothing from the last century? What should we have learned?
Yeah, what should we have learned, Lindsey? The fact that you're standing up there with Blumenthal, and whenever a Republican and a Democrat sitting there and that Democrat's going, lets me know what side you're on, buddy. Lets me know you're a rhino, because just by nature, they like cats and dogs. If you're not a rhino, that guy would have been so far away from you. But for some reason, Lindsey Graham is okay with this too. So he's juggling and playing with our lives too for some reason. No wonder he's a rhino. So this guy is now talking about we should have learned from the past. Well, yeah, we should have learned from the past. How to avoid situations, how to de-escalate situations, how to use common sense. What it seems to me as Lindsey has learned from the Democrats. When in doubt, when you want to discredit somebody, when you want to make them look super duper evil, just simply start calling them Hitler, start calling them white nationalists, white supremacists, fascists, all of that. In other words, project. That's what you do. You project. And see, guys, Putin is about to call us out. This right here hurts because Putin responds to all of this. And you would think that most Americans that got common sense would listen to what he said and says, that guy right there is evil. Listen to what he's saying. It doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, what he's about to say or what you're about to hear, I cannot say it doesn't make sense. See, when I see sense, I got to say a sense. My job is only to make sense out of nonsense. But if something already makes sense, no need to make it make nonsense. So here's Lindsey Graham talking about what he's learned. And it sounds like he learned nothing because he's about to encourage us right into war.
That when it comes to bullies and crazy people
like
who
us,
want to
trying to
put
make
the
him
world
join
under
NATO,
their thumb like Hitler, we should believe what they say.
Hitler.
We should stand up to them sooner rather than later.
That was Republican Senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham. Standing right next to him, Democratic Senator from Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal.
Yep.
Why is virtually every politician, both parties, trying to provoke Russia into using those bombers?
Russia is officially decoupling itself from the globalist West and embracing a post-globalist, post-secular Eurasian East, as it were. And in today's speech, Putin made that decoupling absolutely clear. It was an astonishing speech. Astonishing in terms of its confidence, its bravado, its triumphalism.
Oh, wait a minute, man. Just because what Putin said in whatever speech he said, you can't say it was triumphant, it was great, because that makes you, a Putin puppet, right? Even if what he said makes absolutely 100% sense, which I hate to admit it, but I feel exactly how Putin feels in this particular case.
It's total denunciation, repudiation of the West, the Western powers, I should say, DC, Brussels, Davos.
Not us.
And in fact, it was an official declaration of independence from the increasingly waning liberal globalist world order. The people living in Lugansk and Donetsk and Zaporozhye and Kherson, in Putin's words, are now our citizens, and they are our citizens, quote, forever. He called on Kiev to end the war immediately, a war that Putin noted did not begin back in February of this year, but actually back in 2014, after Lugansk and Donetsk broke away from what Putin calls an unlawful and violent regime change in Kiev, orchestrated by nefarious forces in the West. It's time for Kiev to stop the war and come to the negotiating table.
So to me, it sounds like they toppled a regime and stuck a puppet into Ukraine, and now they're dumping billions and billions of dollars into their puppet and hoping that somehow that will put pressure on Putin and get him out of power, or maybe make his people get upset and turn on him to get him out of power so that the last piece to the puzzle can, be put in place. And Putin's not wanting to become a part of the global alliance? Well, man, this is an eye-opener, y'all. See, because this isn't what America's about. I mean, if we would just keep our big noses out of this, we can go on and live our lives. But from day one, it appears that the Democrats got back in power and they've been orchestrating this all the way. They're doing everything they can to throw fuel on the fire instead of water. And they're playing with our lives. And we knew it. Donald Trump knew it. I mean, we had peace under him. And now what Putin is saying is the Western leaders, the globalist liberal leaders, are the ones who could have avoided all of this. But now everybody else got to pay. And listen to what else he says.
Putin made it absolutely clear that those negotiations will have nothing whatsoever to do with the 5 regions, including Crimea, that have now been officially annexed to the Russian Federation. He went on to publicly accuse what he called the Anglo-Saxons of sabotaging the Nord Stream pipelines. It obviously didn't help that we now have a video that's come to the surface, no pun intended, of Joe Biden promising several months back that if Putin invades Ukraine, the United States would put a decisive end to the Nord Stream pipelines. And then when reporters asked, how are you going to do that? Biden simply said, we're going to do it. We're going to make sure it happens. So, well, obviously Putin took those words to heart in his speech, and he basically accused the United States of sabotaging the pipelines. And that, according to Putin, is but the latest of Western atrocities. He accused Western powers of being essentially addicted to imperialist tendencies. And now with liberal globalism and a radically secular moral degeneracy that denigrates traditional moral norms, religion, and the natural family.
Now, I never thought that I would say that I agree with Vladimir Putin, but he is calling it like it is. These liberal globalists, not Americans. These are not Americans. These are people who does not have America's best interest. These liberal globalists that are pushing this liberal agenda, this globalist agenda, this fascist agenda, this world domination, all of that stuff. And unfortunately, they're trying to pretend that they represent America. No, they don't represent America. They got rid of the person who did. Donald Trump Make America great again. Stay your big nose out of other people's business and we'll be fine. But no, not them. No wonder Lindsey Graham, soon as they tried to impeach Trump, threw him under the bus. No wonder Mitch McConnell and all of them sold him out right after that fake phony second impeachment. So Putin is seeing it just like we're seeing it over here, that these are greedy, evil, liberal globalists that have an agenda. And look what Putin does. He abstracts us from them.
The dictatorship, he said, the dictatorship of Western elites is directed against all societies, including the peoples of the Western nations themselves.
Yep.
He said this, quote, "This is a challenge to all. This is a complete denial of humanity, the overthrow of faith and traditional values. Indeed, the suppression of freedom itself has taken on the feature of a religion." Now,
it's sad when we got to sit here and get lectured by Vladimir Putin because he's dead on. Even us, the people, they don't care nothing about us. We're sitting back saying, yo, whoa, we don't want to be a part of that mess. We want our borders shut up. We don't want to have our kids molested when it comes down to their thinking. We don't want to be a globalist nation. We want to be able to say we love our country. We got pride in our country. But what do we sing? We're singing the Biden administration ran by these globalists, singing these institutions like the FBI and the DOJ and all of that on its own people because we want freedom. Now, all of a sudden, when we say we don't want government in our business, we don't want our guns removed, we want to be able to have freedom of speech, we want to be able to decide what our kids learn and all of that stuff. We want to be able to vote and make decisions about what takes place in our own state, city, and country. These people come in and intimidate us, send the FBI to show up at our cribs, stifle freedom, threaten us, intimidate us, put us on FBI watch lists, and all of those things. So Putin is calling it like we see it. Not like he see it, but also like we see it.
It is outright Satanism.
And
Do we really want here in our country, in Russia, instead of mom and dad, parent number one, parent number two, parent number three, have they gone completely insane?
That's exactly what they've gone. And if you wasn't in this country and you were sitting back from another country looking from there over to here, you would be saying the same thing. That is not the U.S. that I know and love. These people have lost their mind. We must look ridiculous to people in other countries. When they see all of our radical liberals running around here calling everybody racist, fascist, and saying that, you know what, just because you won't let us trans your kids, then you're a fascist and racist and you're killing them and all of that stuff. We have to look ridiculous. And it's embarrassing because when somebody like Vladimir Putin is giving us a lecture and I have to just sit there and go, he's right. We have reached an all-time low. We're better than this. They don't represent the best of America. I hope the grace and mercy of God keeps this from escalating because these dummies are playing with our future.
Do we really want it drilled into our children in schools that there are supposedly genders besides men and women, and children to be offered the chance to undergo sex change operations?
Yeah.
No, we have a different future. We Russians have our own future.
And that's the problem. That's the problem because the globalists don't want anybody operating aside from them. They want a one world government. They want to unite all of these countries under whatever agenda they have going on. So remember, guys, this is not a race war. It's a culture war. They need it to become a culture war, and Putin won't let that crap enter into Russia. China won't let it enter into China. They're keeping that mess away from their people because they're seeing how it has poisoned our country and our culture. She said a while back that we're not going to sissify our boys. So now you see them over there in martial arts class breaking sticks and bricks while our kids over here learning about gender 39. See, and so the people in these other countries like Putin and them, they're looking over and saying, Americans have lost their ever-loving mind. And we ain't going to do that. We want to still be able to say, I love being Russian. Like I want to be able to say, I love being American. We want to be able to say, that's my son and that's my daughter. Not that's the number one, number two, or child X until they make a decision. These are crazy, radical, globalist, stupid ideas that as evil as Russia has been, they got enough common sense to say, we don't want to join that crap. That crap is evil. We thought we were evil. No, that's evil. And if you don't believe me, this is a pushback from just rational people around the globe who want to return back to loving their country, but instead they're being driven by this globalist agenda, as we see the example that took place over in Italy. Now, I'm going to close with this. Look at this lady. You know, this woman has won in Italy. The people have spoken. And look what they call her. Now, remember, they just called Vladimir Putin because he wants to remain sovereign. And he don't want us parking missiles in his backyard. They just called him a dictator. He's Hitler and all of that stuff. And if he's Hitler, then you're telling me this lady right here is Mussolini? But listen to what she's saying. It is very similar to what Vladimir Putin just said about the West, and also what us conservatives have been saying about our leaders and this global agenda.
Potrei farne tante altre di queste domande. A monte c'è quella che ci facciamo oggi. Perché la famiglia è un nemico? Perché la famiglia fa così paura? C'è una risposta unica per tutte queste domande. Perché ci definisce, perché è la nostra identità. Perché tutto quello che ci definisce in questo tempo è un nemico. Per chi vorrebbe che non avessimo più un'identità e che fossero solamente schiavi, consumatori perfetti. E allora è sotto attacco l'identità nazionale, è sotto attacco l'identità religiosa, è sotto attacco l'identità di genere, è sotto attacco l'identità familiare. Non devo potermi definire italiana, cristiana, donna, madre, no. Io devo essere cittadino X, genere X, genitore 1, genitore 2, devo essere un numero. Perché quando sarò solamente un numero, quando non avrò più un'identità, quando non avrò più radici, allora sarò lo schiavo perfetto in balia della grande speculazione finanziaria. Il consumatore perfetto.
Voters in Italy tomorrow appear poised to make a hard right turn. The woman expected to become prime minister leads a party with roots in neo-fascism.
Hallmarks of Italian fascism, like this motto.
Difenderemo Dio, patria e famiglia.
God, fatherland, and family.
Oh, yeah, that's fascist.
Far-right political party whose roots go back to post-World War II neo-fascist.
Most far-right government in that country since Mussolini.
Most right-wing government since Mussolini.
Notice they all got the memo. Mussolini, fascism, neo-fascism, Putin's Hitler, Donald Trump's Hitler, all of those things. Now, why would they be doing this? Because it appears that every leader that believes in fundamental value principles like women and men and your children and family and God, all of those things, those people are standing in the way of globalism. They're standing in the way of this one world government. They want to remain sovereign countries. They don't want to just be reduced to a number or a gender or a race or whatever. And so to undermine these people and to attack them and allow these globalists who are trying to lead the whole world into one world government to undermine these people, they got to start calling them fascists. Dictators. We got to get rid of them. These folks are like Mussolini. These folks are like Hitler. And in reality, they're the ones just like that. They're doing that to us. Justin Trudeau, the man chicken up there, did that to his own people. Silence their speech. Get rid of their guns. Control their bank accounts. All of these things all point towards world domination. And if you allow these leaders and the people who recognize what these globalists are doing to rise up and stand in the way of that, then you'll never accomplish your goal. Therefore, immediately, we got to chop off the head when it pops up. And people say, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's sad when I hear Vladimir Putin say things that I have to shake my head and say, I feel the same way. This woman in Italy feels the same way. Nothing she said was bad or resembled fascism, dictatorship, and none of that. And yet, these folks, these propagandists got right on TV and called her a fascist, compared her to Mussolini. So now you got to ask yourself, if you're just a regular citizen that want to be left alone, you want to be able to have a family, pursue the American dream, not be called a racist, not be called a fascist, a xenophobe, a homophobe, an extremist because you love your country, not have your children taken off and taught all of this stuff that is damaging to their psyche. If you're just a regular citizen that believes in Christianity, believes in God, all of those things, these globalists will throw you in the category as an extremist and a fascist. See, so I got a gut feeling we've discovered who the real enemy is. It's not Americans. It's not Russians. It's not Italians. It is globalists, a small group of rich, powerful people trying to push us towards a one world government. And anybody who resists that come under severe attack. That's why they got to stop Trump. That's why they got to get rid of Vladimir Putin. And that's why they just called this woman a fascist. And they're doing it to all the rest of any of our Republican nominees that aren't Lindsey Grahams. People who say, nah, we see the direction you're trying to take America in, and we're not going in that direction. And therefore, those people also pop up on the radar in the list of fascism. But I'm here to expose that garbage. The devil is a liar. Now, God bless y'all. God bless America, and we'll see y'all next time in Kevin's Corner. Take care. God bless y'all. God bless America. Don't forget to hit that like button, share my videos, find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those good things. And please check out Extreme Teas, my sponsor. If you like their products, please click on the link below this video. Put Kevin in a promo code. You'll get a 20% discount. If you'd like to donate to Kevin's Corner, feel free. The links are below this video. If you want to be a part of my $2 a month club, also feel free to do that. All it entails is you simply dropping $2 a month into one of those links below the video. Or if you want, you can drop a nice big fat lump sum in there to offset the stuff that we know goes on with big tech. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Make sure that you are still subscribed. And finally, set your notification button to all, because YouTube is playing games, y'all. Now, God bless you. God bless America. See y'all next time in Kevin's Corner.